Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shcha. Revapre Navabhakti Shastya Vitati Sanjivani Swagama Rambe Kamata Paratu Dahadamani Vishwa Pugulasini Duran Me Marusha Kinopi Sarasi Bhavaya Bhuyat Prabhu Shri Chaitanya Kripani Rankusha Maha Madhurya Kadambini Bhakti Purva Shrita Tongtura Sampashadya Dhatadi Tam Nomi Satatam Rupa Nama Prayojanam Hari Hari Om Tat Sat. So we want to finish up our discussion on Anartha-nivritti today. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving elaborate discussion on the stage, you can call it, of Anartha-nivritti. So his discussion basically has three parts to it. The first part, he is describing the four categories of anarthas. So anarthas coming from sin, anarthas coming from piety, anarthas coming from aparad, and anarthas coming from bhakti. That's what he basically discusses in the first part of the exposition of Anartha-nivritti. And it gives some elaborate discussion specifically on aparad, dhota anarthas, because aparads are the real obstacle in bhakti. In the second part of his exposition on Anartha-nivritti, he's discussing the 5 degrees of nullification of the anarthas. You know, there was terms used, ekadesha vartini, bahudesha vartini, but basically, you know, the nullification is partial, pervasive, almost complete, complete and absolute. Those are the 5 degrees of nullification. And at different degrees of advancement in bhakti, one experiences the effect of nullification of these different categories of anarthas. With the aparad, dhota anartha being very long-standing, even up into the stage of bhava and prema, there can be effects. So aparads are particularly problematic. All right, so we're going to finish the discussion today. This third part of his exposition on Anartha-nivritti, he wants to reconcile the glories of the holy name that we encounter in Shastra with his discussion of the degrees of nullification. So I'll show my screen here, you can see it. So he's, in the first part here, he's referencing several statements from Shastra which glorifies the holy name. Here's one statement, this comes in Patyavali. If the sun of the holy name arises even once, it destroys heaps of sins, as the rising sun destroys oceans of darkness. Right, here's another one. A Chandala can obtain liberation from material bondage by even once hearing your name. Okay, he also quotes the example of Ajamil, who we know just by chanting Namabhas, he got rid of the reactions to sins, the seed of sin, which is desire, and also the seed of desire, which is avidya. So these are the 3 causes of kleshas mentioned by Sri Rupa Goswami. So all that was destroyed by one Namabhas chanting of the holy name. So all these evidences from Shastra wants to demonstrate that the holy name is very powerful and that the destruction of anartha is instantaneous. That's basically what these statements are tending to indicate. So these statements of Shastra and his discussion on degrees of nullification seem contradictory. So there's need to reconcile these particular ideas here. So then this is how he reconciles it basically. He says, it is true that the holy name undoubtedly possesses such power. However, if the holy name being displeased with offenders does not manifest its power, this suggests the existence of anarthas and sins. So this is basically his point for reconciliation. It is not that the name is devoid of such shakti and that therefore is not actually giving this particular effect, or that these statements of Shastra are arthavada, which means basically hyperbole, or kalpanam, like an imagination. The word kalpana means imagination, or like a mental imposition of the glories of the holy name that's not actually true. To think so in both cases is two types of nam aparad, arthavada and harinama kalpana. These are two types of aparad. So this is not the case. Actually, nam has all shakti. Nam akadi bahuda nija sarva shakti. Unfortunately, daiva minti shamiha na anuraga, as Sri Mahaprabhu is saying. Unfortunately, durdaiva. Durdaiva means, bad destiny. Which here means I commit offenses. So durdaivam, because of offenses, I have no anuraga. Not only do I not have anuraga for the holy name, but also the experience of the sarva shakti. Nam nama kari bahuda ninja sarva shakti. The name is supposed to have all the shakti. My experience of that potency is not there because the name is withholding its power on account of its displeasure. That's literally the meaning of aparad, to cause a displeasure of the Lord, basically. Apa means the removal, and rada, of pleasure. So the Lord is displeased. So because of his displeasure, he's not manifesting all his power. And because he's not manifesting all his power, one is not experiencing certain effects, such as the destruction of anarthas. In other words, from one who is displeased the Lord by committing offenses, then one will see such persons still exhibit anarthas, including sinful proclivities or proclivities towards piety also, etc. These things will remain because the holy name is displeased. So in other words, the holy name is a person. It is not that it's like an object, that by doing this, then you get this particular result. That works very well with inanimate objects. Well, for the most part, if I charge my phone at 100%, then it's going to last, 17 hours of the day, for example. I think that's what my phone says. So, but the holy name is not such a machine, it's a person. So if the holy name is displeased, he withholds his power. And on account of the withdrawal or withholding of Shakti by the Lord, then one does not experience these amazing effects that we hear in Shastra. That's basically his reconciliation here. He elaborates here, but the Yamadutas, the messengers of Yamaraj, are powerless to attack even such offenders, for the Shastras say, such offenders do not see Yama's noose bearing servants even in a dream. So if you study 6th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, the first chapter of the Ajamil Lila, it opens up with the Parikshit Maharaj inquiring how souls can be saved from going to hell, because he's just heard about the hellish region at the end of the 5th canto. So he inquires how souls can be saved from going to hell. So Shukadeva Goswami, he first gives an answer according to Karma Shastra, to which Parikshit Maharaj rejects, because he says the answer is you should do prayashchitta. If you commit some sin, then you should do atonement. And if your sin was very heavy, you should do very heavy atonement. If your sin was relatively lighter, you can do lighter atonement. But atonement is the cure. This was rejected by Parikshit Maharaj, calling it as an elephant bath. Apparently, elephants, they go and take bath, and as soon as they come out, they again throw dust on themselves. So this is prayashchitta. It's like this, because although prayashchitta addresses the reactions to sinful acts, it doesn't address their root causes, namely desire and avidya. So Parikshit Maharaj rejects this. So then Shukadeva Goswami gives answer in terms of Gyan Shastra. And you should get the knowledge. This was also not satisfying to Parikshit Maharaj. So then finally, Shukadeva Goswami gives answer according to Bhakti Shastras, that you should do Bhakti Yoga. And I think the actual analogy that is given is just as the sun, when it rises, it dissipates the fog. So in the same way, when the sun of Krishna consciousness arises, then it dissipates the fog of avidya and its corollaries, material desire and sinful activities. And then he quotes this particular verse, Sakren mana Krishna padara vindayo niveshitam ta gunaragi yariha. Yateya mam pasha britashta tab tang swapne pipashanti hichirna nishkrita. This is verses 6-19. Although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely onto his lotus feet, Sakren Mana Krishna Padara Vindaya, even once they've surrendered to the Lord, and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, Taguna Ragi, they become Ragi. Ragi means attracted, like you have raga for sense objects, so you get raga for the qualities of Krishna and so on. Then he says here, for these people, for them, they become completely freed of all sinful reactions, for they have thus accepted the true method of atonement. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers, who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful. So Sri Vishnu making reference to this particular statement here, that even if you are an operati, and as a result, holy name is displeased with you, he's withholding his power, and so it is seen in you some anarthas and some proclivity for sin, piety, etc. Still, such offenders will not see Yamaraj. So I guess there's some relief in knowing that. He also quotes this statement when we were hearing about the seventh offense of the holy name, Namno Bhala Hiyasya Papa Buddhi, that to commit sins from the strength of chanting. So there in that verse, it says that for one who does that, then it is extremely sinful, and one cannot be saved. One cannot be purified even by the yamas. That's what the particular verse is saying. So Sri Vishnu says the yamas in that particular verse means the angas of Ashtanga yoga process, yama, niyama, etc. That even if you take to these different yamas and niyamas of Ashtanga yoga process to purify yourself of anartha, of the sin, of the aparad of committing sin on the strength of holy name, you cannot be purified. I guess some people would interpret that particular verse to mean that you can't be purified even by being punished by Yamaraj. I guess some interpret that verse in that particular way. So Sri Vishnu wanted to make a comment about it. The idea is that when you do sin, if you don't atone for it or you don't liquidate the sin by, let's say, bhakti, then you have to go to Yamaraj and you punish. And when you are punished, you get purified of that reaction when you suffer. So someone may say that this particular seventh offense means that even if you get punished by Yamaraj, then you cannot be purified of this particular aparad. But Sri Vaishnava points out that this is not, the word yama in that particular verse means the angas of Ashtanga yoga, because from this verse to the sixth canto, you won't even see Yamaraj, even if you're an aparati. You won't even see Yamaraj in your dreams or his order carriers. So what to speak of being punished by him. So anyway, that's just a little kind of a sidebar. But his main point is this: the holy name is displeased, therefore he's withholding power, therefore anarthas are seen as such a person. Okay, he elaborates on this by giving an example. So the example he gives here, I'm not reading everything because it's straightforward. But the example he's giving here is of a wealthy merchant or master. So he's capable of taking care of his servant, but if the servant disrespects him in an egregious way or causes his displeasure, then he removes his protection, and that servant has to suffer from distress, from poverty, from sadness. Later on, if the servant, realizing his transgressions, repents and goes back and pleases the wealthy master, then the master again gives him shelter and gives him facility and takes care of him and so on. So the holy name is being compared to such a wealthy master. We're being compared to the servant. So the master will protect his own people. So if you are a servant, then he'll give protection. But if you displease him, then he may withhold grace from such a person, just as the wealthy master withholds grace from a servant who disrespects him or causes his displeasure. It doesn't mean that the servant isn't capable of giving protection. He's certainly capable of giving protection and facility and etc. But he's withholding it because he's displeased. So the holy name is certainly able to give protection. He's certainly able to remove these anarthas, but he's not doing. because you've caused displeasure. If you, become humble, one becomes humble and appreciates this, like, wow, I've committed so much aparad. And therefore he goes and tries to please his master. Here he says here, by sincerely serving the devotees, shastras, guru, because these are the types of offenses that we may commit, the 10 offenses, right? Where you're offending sadhus, offending shastra, offending guru, etc. So the people you've offended, Krishna's people, and you go and please them, thus pleasing the holy name, then again, he gives you shelter. That's his point. This is the example that he wants to give here. So he says here, there should thus be no conflict about this statement. So then he goes sidebar here. If someone says, I am offenseless, I have never committed any offense. Because somehow or other we do tend to think this way. I'm such a good guy or good gal. I've not committed any aparad. So he says you should not say like this, because a tree will be judged by the fruit. So the fruit is what? Fruit is that the heart is hard. There are no symptoms of love. So what is a tree? The tree means aparadi. You are an aparadi because these fruits are not coming. So he quotes this verse, which he quoted earlier also. Talashma saram hridaya bateta nagrihyamana harinamadaya. Avikrayetata yata vikaro netre jalam gatru ruheshu harsha. So that heart is certainly still framed. Tarashma saram hridaya bateta. That heart is certainly still framed. Yagrihyamana harinamadaya. Despite chanting the holy name with concentration, navikriya ata. Navikriyeta, there is no change in the heart. So change means bhav bhakti specifically. And the ata yadavikaro nete jalam gatruheshu hash. So these are the symptoms of a changed heart. The saptika bhavas, tears coming from the eyes, horripilation, the goosebumps, becoming pale, becoming choked up, becoming stunned, fainting. These are the different saptika bhavas. There are 8 of them. Romancha Kampashru, Taranga Bajo, Vande Guru, Sri Charananda Vindam. These saptika bhavas are there. That is the symptom of a changed heart. So you're chanting Harinam with concentration. Still, you're not getting any saptika bhavas. Therefore, your heart is still framed. That's what the verse is saying. Still, you're doing Harinam every day, Hari Bhajan. We're doing every day Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna. Every day chanting, doing some Shravan also, a little bit of Smartam, a little touch. Still, there are no saptika bhavas. That means your heart is still framed. We're not getting any saptika bhavas, because that is the fruit of chanting Harinam. You get the saptika bhavas. That was the Mayavadi sannyasis, their criticism of Mahaprabhu. They saw him dancing in the street with tears in the eyes, becoming choked up, stunned, fainting. So they're like, you're like a sentimentalist with a bhavuka. They use the word bhavuka, which they use there as a pejorative, even though the Srimad Bhagavatam uses it as a glorification. Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. Pibata Bhagavatam rasa alaya. Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. Right? The Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, you drink this Srimad Bhagavatam. Who should drink it? The rasikas and the bhavukas. Rasika means those who know Rasa Shastra. And the bhavukas, those who have soft hearts due to bhav bhakti. Krishna also talks about these people in Gita. Bhava samanvita. How's that verse go? Oh my God. The first of the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita. Waka. Iti mata bhajante mam Buddha bhava samanvita. Buddha bhava samanvita, right? Those who know Krishna to be the source of everything spiritual material, iti matva, understanding this. Bhajante man, they do his bhajan. He said, they do my bhajan. And Buddha, they are intelligent, bhava samanvita, and they become infused with bhav bhakti. So many statements like this. So this is the effect. If you do Hare Krishna chanting, the bhav comes, the saptika bhavs come. And the Mayavadi sannyasis were criticizing Mahaprabhu for this. So he had to explain, no, I chanted Hare Krishna and this happened to me. Even myself, I got bewildered. So I didn't do it on purpose. The Sattvika Bhavas, they don't happen on purpose. They're not like conscious acts. Oh, anyway, genuine sattvika bhavas don't happen consciously. So they're just unconscious responses to the movement of bhava in the heart. So he said, I don't do it on purpose. It just happened. And I myself was scared about it. So I went to my Gurudev and asked about it. My Gurudev became very pleased with me, saying this indeed is the effect of chanting Hare Krishna. So if this isn't happening to you, then your heart must be still framed. So you cannot say, why is the heart still? Because you commit offenses. That's the point that's being made here. So you're not saying, oh, I am offenseless. I have never committed any offense. Okay, you have sattvika bhavas. No, that means aparad. All of our commentators, they elaborate a little bit on this verse by saying that there are people who have, I guess, practice in imitation of the sattvika bhavas. So they cry, they become choked up, they become stunned, they faint, etc. It can be seen in India. It's like a big drama performance. Or sometimes there may be a little bit of bhav bhas there, pratya bhas, bhav bhas. So these external symptoms of the body come up. So, and people who don't really have a changed heart or bhav bhakti, and for those who are actually bhavukas, they have changed hearts, it may not be seeing these external symptoms of the sattvika bhavas. So because of this, our Acharya said that this particular verse should be explained, and this is how Prabhupada translates it, this Tadashma Sadam verse. The way Prabhupada translates is that even though you're chanting Harinam with concentration, and even tears are coming, your goosebumps are coming, all of that is coming, still your heart is not changed. Therefore, you are still framed. In other words, it appears that you're getting some of the symptoms, but your heart is still framed if it doesn't change inside. So what are the symptoms of an actually changed heart? So, of course, our commentators, they quote this verse from the Bhav Bhakti section, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Kshantir Avyarta Kalatam Virakti Manashunyata, etc. These verses are saying gives 9 symptoms from someone who has genuine Bhav Bhakti. Kshantir means, forgiveness or tolerance, means that even if there is a reason to be disturbed, one remains undisturbed. This is called Shantir. The example given by Rupa Goswami is Parikshit Maharaj. He was cursed to die in 7 days. Pretty good reason to be disturbed, but he was undisturbed. Therefore, this quality Shantir is a symptom of Bhav Bhakti. Avyarta Kalatvam, not wasting any time, mentally, in your speech, of course, in your actions. Virakti, detachment. Example given of Bharat Maharaj. He gave up kingdom, family, everything. Like one abandoned stool. That's the verse that's quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami. So that means just as one is happy to give up stool, one is happy to give up all these things. That is virakti. Manya shunyata, even though you have reason to be proud, you're very devoid of pride. Ashabhanda, so many qualities are mentioned. 9 are there, including namagani sadaruchi, always tasting the bliss of chanting nam, attachment to the qualities of the Lord, attachment to living in the place of the Lord. So 9 are mentioned there. So these are the real symptoms of Bhav Bhakti. So the verse should be understood that even if you're chanting holy names, tears are coming also. But these symptoms, these 9 symptoms of genuine Bhav are not seen to manifest. Necessarily your heart must be still framed. So why is the heart still framed? Because you commit aparad. So one should not say, I am not an aparadi. So this is happening. So in this way, this is Sri Vishnu reconciling these 2 ideas here. Moving on, he goes on to say, he wants to answer the question, is it possible for such aparadis to leave bhakti? So he answers this point here also. He writes here, in relationship to non-aparad, it is said, O best of brahmanas, what are those aparads, the holy name, that destroy good fortune of the offender and give him a misconception of considering transcendental objects material? I don't know what Shastra this is from. I forgot. I think our commentators, but it's a verse from some Shastra. So this verse is expressing astonishment. The astonishment is that, well, let me read on a little bit. The meaning of this question is that repeated chanting and hearing of the qualities and names of the Lord should give prema very quickly, right? Serving the holy Dham for a long time should give perfection. Repeatedly relishing the ghee, milk, betel, and other preparations offered to the Lord should retard the waves of sense enjoyment, right? What are the grave offenses that diminish the respect of fruits and make all these spiritual items appear material? So yeah, this verse that's being quoted from whatever Shastra is being quoted from, wants to express astonishment that service to the name, service to the Dham, service to Mahaprasad, etc. These are all spiritual substances and they should give the result immediately. Srimad Bhagavatam, second verse, Ishvara sadhyo hridi avarudite atra kritibi shushushabi sakshana. It's saying that the Lord immediately becomes captured in the heart by one who simply desires to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, the word used there is kritibihi. So the word kritibihi means, one who has piety. And in the context of the shloka, the word piety here means, is a sort of a reference to the first line of the verse. Dharma projita kaitava atra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Nirmatsaranam satam. Nirmatsarya means one who is not envious. Enviousness means the inability to appreciate the value in others. So nirmatsarya means he's devoid of that that tendency to devalue that which is of value in others. And the reason is because satam. Satam means like someone who is situated in sat. So he can see the truth. He can see what is truly valuable. So this type of person, their matsarya satam, is called kritibi, a pious person. So this kritibi person, he immediately captures the Lord in his heart simply by desiring to hear Bhagavatam. Not even hearing Bhagavatam, just his eagerness to hear the Bhagavatam causes the Lord to be captured in the heart. And the Lord can only be captured by prema. So that means that just the desire to hear Srimad Bhagavatam should give prema. That's what the verse is saying, which is very extraordinary. If you're a kritibi person, the desire to hear Srimad Bhagavatam gives prema. So all these things, nam, the dham, the prasad, Bhagavad Shravan, etc., so much they're supposed to give prema, but not only are these fruits not coming because of aparat, but because of aparat, one is starting to see these things as material. This is the astonishment that the verse is expressing. Not only is this effect not coming, but a reverse thing is happening. That one is starting to see that, oh, sadhus are material, Bhagavatam is just another literature, like any other literature. This is just food. This is just, another location on the earth planet, the Dhams. So naturally, when you see something as material, the nature of material things is that they become devoid of rasa, like chewing the bubble gum. You chew 1, 2, usually it's like twice, and then it's like devoid of flavor after two bites, 2 chews. So like there's material things that are devoid of rasa very quickly, you give them up. That's what he's saying here. So this is astonishing that not only is the fruit not coming, but the opposite thing is happening. You start to see it as material and then you give it up. So does a non-aparati give up bhakti? Does he become averse to the Lord and give up his bhajan? This question is being brought to the table and the answer is yes. So it says here, this is astonishing. An unnerving question is being raised. Does it mean an offender becomes averse to the Lord in bhajan kriya, such as taking shelter at the feet of Guru and so on, is impossible for him? So, it is indeed true. That's what I'm wondering. So, is it possible someone becomes vimukata? Vimukata means filled with the aversion towards the Lord and gives up bhajan kriya? So, the answer is yes. Plenty of examples are there. Of course, the way it seems to happen, at least contemporarily speaking, the way it seems to happen, people start having these like amazing justifications for why they're leaving their bhajan. They have amazing, all the sadhus are XYZ, all the holy name, it's just not XYZ. So people have basically the way the environment shifts around you. This is probably generally true of perception, but the way the environment shifts around you is that it confirms your aversion. And so you think, yeah, what is the value of all these things? And you leave your bhajan. So he gives an example of this. In a heavy fever, one cannot accept food. Simply by the presence of heavy non-aparas, a person loses taste for hearing, chanting, and other devotional practices. So non-aparas being compared to fever. When you have heavy fever, you cannot eat. So when the fever of non-aparas is upon you, then you cannot eat the activities of bhajan. That means you can't do shravan kirtan. It diminishes, and then you just like, I had enough. I can't even do it. Okay, but as the fever becomes lower and its effects lessen, one again gets some taste for food. Similarly, after going through the effects of non-aparad for a long time, their effects reduce, and one again gets some taste for devotion. So, right. If your fever goes down, you can start to eat a little bit, but not full. You can eat a little bit. Similarly, after you've suffered the effects of non-aparad for a while, which probably means over lifetimes even in certain cases, then after having suffered the effects, the fever is reduced a little bit, and you can chant a little bit. You can hear a little bit, not too much, but you can show up for the Thursday night kirtan, for example. You know, you're not going to do japa at home, but you can show up for the kirtan. You don't mind. You start to actually appreciate. Gradually, your appetite is coming back. Nourishing foods such as milk and grains do not nourish the person completely, though his fever has reduced. Right. So they nourish him slowly and gradually. They are unable to relieve him from the weakness of fatigue due to fever. In time, however, if medicines and a proper diet are taken properly, then the fever completely goes away. So too, in a devotee doing devotion, taste for hearing, chanting, and other devotional practices gradually arises. Okay, I think that should be clear. This last sentence is important. He says, then faith, sadhu sangha, bhajan kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, and so on, all these stages that were described follow in sequence. So our commentators, they bring up the reason why Shastra is telling about the sequence of the development of bhakti is primarily because we're suffering from a fever, which makes our taste in the devotional angas not strong in the beginning, and they only gradually become stronger as we accept the proper medicine, take the proper diet, then gradually our appetite for bhakti bhajan increases. So this sequence of faith, sadhu sangha, bhajan, kriya, anartha nivritti is kind of more or less an expression of the gradual diminishing of the fever and the arousal of bhakti appetite. Otherwise, they're quoting from Sri Vaishnava's commentary to the 6th canto, chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. It's, for those who are offenseless, there's only 2 stages. Sri Vaishnava writes there. For those who are offenseless, there's only 2 stages. Stage 1, chanting Hare Krishna. Stage 2, attaining Vaikuntha. Only 2 stages for the offenseless. But if you are offensive, then these stages are there. Sadhu, bhajan, anartha nivritti, nishta, and so on. So for this reason, Shastra is giving this sequence of how bhakti is developing in a person. Okay, final point here in this last part of his exposition on anartha nivritti. It is saying that offensive people don't seem to be experiencing the effects either. So this is brought up. By observing the absence of symptoms of prema in devotees chanting the holy name and the presence of a tendency to sin, some presume the existence of non-aparad. So the example here is given of Ajamila. So Ajamila we hear from Shastra, he was offenseless. But even though he was offenseless, he did not have prema, and he showed predilection towards sinful activity. He liked hooking up with his maidservant. I don't know if they got married proper. Like, he gave up his wife to hook up with his prostitute. So I don't know if they got married proper. But he was, in love with her. This was considered sinful activity. It was against his Brahma karma dharma. So the sinful activity is there. So what about him? He was offenseless. He didn't get prema, and he was doing sin. What about that? That's the example in his case. Moreover, seeing the material distresses in such devotees, they suppose that there's a lack of destruction of parabdha in the devotee. So the prarabdha karmas are the karmas that we are suffering now in the form of our body and our qualities, etc. This is called prarabdha karma. So if you look at devotees, practically most of the devotees you encounter in the Bhagavatam, but the example here is specifically given of Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they suffered like anything. They were exiles to the forest. That whole gambling match was a huge fiasco. And they suffered like anything. So someone may say, well, I thought the holy name destroys the prarabdha karma. Bhakti destroys prarabdha karma. That's what we hear from Srila Rupa Goswami. But it looks like they're suffering from their prarabdha karma. So, and they're nitya parikar. So what's that all about? So this, he wants to reconcile here. First of all, offenseless persons not getting the fruit and seeming to have predilection towards sin. And even perfect persons like Yudhishthira Maharaj seeming to suffer prarabdha karma. I thought the name and bhakti takes care of all of this. What's going on here? So he says this here. The conclusion is, therefore, that generally a fruit tree bears fruit only in the proper season. That's his concluding statement. Thus, though the name is pleased with an offenseless person, he bestows his mercy only in due course of time. That's basically his siddhanta here, his punchline. Sins committed by them due to their previous habits are as insignificant as the bite of a snake without poisonous fangs. Wow, that's encouraging to hear. If you're an offensive person, if you read this and like, yeah, then that's going to be operatic. But for this offensive person, he's saying this. Even sins committed by them, it's like the bite of a snake without poisonous fangs. So yes, Ajamil was seen to still like his girlfriend, but there was no effect there. Disease or other distresses seen in them is not a result of prarabdha. The Lord himself has said, Yas yaha on the nami harishe. To whom I bestow my mercy, I gradually take away all his wealth. His relatives and family reject him, seeing him penniless and suffering from distress one after another. Seeing, yeah. In another place, the Lord has said, the great disease of poverty is a symptom of my mercy. Let's read that one again. The great disease, the word used is maharoga. The great disease of poverty is a symptom of my mercy. Y'all looking forward to that mercy from the Lord? By his own will, the clever Lord, who gives all auspiciousness to his devotees, gives distress to his devotees to increase their humility and eagerness. Therefore, because reactions to fruitive activities are absent in them, the distress seen in the devotees is not the result of their prarabdha. So that's how he wants to handle that. And that ends his exposition on Anartha Vritti. Anartha Vritti closes out with this particular statement here. So yeah, for devotees who are offenseless or who are nitya parikar, it looks like they're experiencing existence like any one of the conditioned souls, but this is denied by Bhakti Shastras. Rather, one has to understand that the Lord is doing something. Here, Sri Vishnu says specifically to increase their humility and eagerness. So it's very hard to be humble and be eager when you're surrounded by material prosperity, especially if you're a sadhaka. That's what Queen Kunti also is saying this thing. Very hard to be humble and eager when, life is good. Got money. I got such a loving partner. Got nice palatable food. How are you going to be humble? It's very difficult. People look to me as a shining example of the community, of charity, and of sacrifice. So how you will become humble and become eager for the goal of your life? Very difficult. So therefore, Queen Kunti said, Vipade santuta shashvat tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yashara punar bhavadarshana. Therefore, she prays for calamities. Let the calamities come again and again, because there's calamity, I remember you, and I remember you, the death world is finished. My relation to the death world is finished. So somehow suffering and great devotion have some sort of relationship with each other. Not that it's always the case, but it seems to be generally the case that there's some sort of intimate dance that blossoming bhakti and suffering share with one another, especially when you're a sadhaka in this material world. So devotees should not look upon their suffering with disrespect. In fact, in the Anchakanda of now this is just coming to mind just now, in the Anchakanda of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapter 9, in the beginning, Advaita Acharya is speaking. He says that suffering are these servants of the Supreme Lord. They're actually rendering the devotees seva. That's a different spin of vision. So one should not disrespect their suffering. It is grace coming. It is a servant coming to do some service to us. It would appear we are instructed to think in this way, at least. And what is the service that they offer to us? Well, they increase our humility and our eagerness for the real things in life, the paramartha, our sadhya. So, of course, I'm sure that most of us not seeing the effects of an offenseless person, we may think, oh, it must be some aparat. And certainly in our case, such thinking is warranted because we know what we are subjectively. But it's not always the case that one who doesn't experience the effects of apparatis. In certain cases, Krishna's just doing his thing with that particular devotee, giving the fruit at the right time and making some special arrangement to help his devotee augment his bhakti. Okay, so that's his exposition on anartha nivritti. The first part, an elaboration on the 4 categories of anarthas. The second part, the degrees of nullification of anarthas. And the last part, a reconciliation of the concept of degrees of nullification of anarthas with the glorifications of the holy name, which speaks of the holy name like wiping out all anarthas instantaneously. So that's been reconciled, and he'll move on to the next stage of bhakti in the next shower. Okay, let's see here. This one thing here, I am always curious to know what kind of aparat a devotee in bhava and prema does. Any example? Not really. I always, when I read that verse from BRS, the verse is describing if a bhavuka does aparad, then his bhava will be decreased. If it's very severe, his bhava can go away even. And if it's minor, then his bhava can become of an inferior type, inferior. And nothing, in one sense, nothing is inferior in the realm of transcendence, but one goes, let's say, from Madhurya rasa to dasa rasa. That's what's mentioned in the commentary there. So I always just took the example given is Dvivida Gorilla. That's the only example that's given in the commentaries for this particular idea. He had love for Ramchandra. He fought in the war against Ravana. Later on, he committed some aparad to Lakshman, it seems. After that aparad, he got the association of Narakasura, became a big time demon, and started offending the Lord's devotees. And then Balaram had to kill him. So his example is cited. That's the only example that's cited. And I don't really know of any others. There is in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's some discussion or mention of Shachimata and her quote, I'm using air quotes here, offense to Advaita Acharya. And during the Mahaprakash Leela, Mahaprabhu was like, I'll not give you prema because you committed aparad to Advaita Acharya, for which she had to repent and seek his mercy. Other than this, I don't know if there are really examples. You said what kind of aparad? It's any of the aparads, but probably a lot of it will be relating to Vaishnava aparad specifically. That one, because it gets tricky, because you're dealing with the swabhava of a living entity, which is complex. Drishta swabhava janitaya vapushashta doshaya. The swabhava, that swabhava, that means like their personality, their idiosyncrasies, the way they talk, the way they eat their food. Like when you're living around someone all the time and seeing those idiosyncrasies constantly, they talk loud or they talk aggressively. It's like that's part of their svabhava. You find fault with that, you commit some aparad. Why would a Bhavuka devotee do it or a Premika devotee? I don't know how it happens. If it happens, I think it's very rare, but if it does happen, it's probably that Vaishnava aparad is a little bit, it can be challenging to avoid, especially for sadhakas to see with material eyes. I usually take it as just a warning to sadhakas to like really be mindful about aparads, but it's definitely there as a statement. I asked the above question because we read the 8 qualities manifested in someone experiencing Bhav. Seems no scope of committing offense. Yeah, so if it does happen, it must be a very rare thing. Okay, Mukunda has some question. Oh, God, I missed it.
Hare Krishna. That statement of how sorry, baby in the background. That statement of how Krishna will, for his devotees, he'll increase their dependence on him by taking everything away from them. And sometimes we'll see in devotees' lives where they go through some extreme hardships, and more likely than not, I feel like, at least of the examples that I've heard, they tend to fall away, or it seems like they're kind of like lose faith or whatever it may be. So is that statement referring specifically to like the devotees in the higher stages, or?
No, I think if people lose faith and go away, that's aparad.
Okay.
At least as far as this exposition is concerned, Bhakti philosophy in general is concerned. Someone goes away, it's aparad. Because how can you go away for something you have genuine faith in? Well, something you have genuine faith in, you can't just give it up. Just like, for example, materialism. All of us, conditioned souls, we have genuine faith in material life. Therefore, we can't just give it up. Even you try to give it up, you can't. You may have noticed, right? You may even have opposite, like, I know this is not good for me, wasting time doing this and that, but still you cannot give it up, which speaks to a certain faith that you have in it, that it can give some sort of happiness, it can give some peace, some release. A word that I hear a lot, decompression. I need to decompress a little bit from, that means we have faith in these things. So even if you want to give it up, many times we want to why am I watching this nonsense? Why I want it, but you can't just give it up because you have genuine faith in it. So if you have genuine faith in Christian consciousness, you can't just give it up. Even if you try, you'd not be able to. So if someone gives it up, that means aparad. That's Bhakti philosophy around that. Someone who has genuine faith, when they suffer like that, they become contemplative, right? That is basically, because most of the time we're doing the bhakti without any consciousness, right? The statement is coming first conscious, then Krishna consciousness. So many times we're like a machine doing things with no soul inside. So when one suffers, one becomes, usually if a faithful person becomes deeply contemplative. Example, Gajendra, and Prabhupada makes this specific point about this pastime. In Gajendra Moksha pastime, he's fighting with the crocodile. He's in the water because he's not in his natural environment. He's losing potency, whereas the crocodile, being in his natural environment, is gaining potency. So they're fighting for 1,000 years or 10,000, like a minute. And finally, Gajendra realizes that I'm about to be finished. And what does he do in that situation? He offers prayers to the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada comments there that this is only possible for a pious person, and specifically devotional piety in this case, that suffering will lead to the inspiration to take shelter of God. He said this is certainly not possible for an impious person. When they suffer, then their tendency is to become nihilistic and just merge into the abyss of despair. That's could be easily observed in today's culture of despair. So if someone is truly faithful, when they suffer, they become contemplative. And that the result of that contemplation, mana bhava ma bhakto mam yaji mam namaskuru. Mam namaskuru. They take shelter of God. They offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord. So that statement that their suffering makes them 100% attached to me is correct. For the faithful devotee who's really about that bhakti life, despite having anarthas and obstacles, when he suffers, he realized like Krishna is my only shelter. And there are also plenty of examples like that, contemporary examples of people you may know, or I certainly know some who suffer like anything. And the result of their suffering was like taking full shelter of Krishna. Sometimes in dramatic ways, such as just leaving everything and going to the Dham and just taking full shelter of God. And in other ways it comes up also. And I don't think, yeah, so if you're a faithful person, you can't just give up on the thing that you have faith in. It's not possible. So if you suffer that way, it just makes you contemplative, and then you take shelter of God more deeply. Okay. Agape says, I love how we learn all these different reasons, stages for external suffering. Karma, aparat, to increase our bhav, etc. To most, it all looks the same from the outside, another soul struggling. Yeah, well, it's spiritual. So spirituality, very subtle. So hard to ascertain what's going on just with material eyes. Pashtana pina pashati, although seeing, not pashati, not seeing. Although seeing, not seeing, which means one sees, but one doesn't examine. So our acharyas, they are examining for us. So they're giving us all these different subtleties. Okay, isn't it true that our swarup can't change? So how can Madhurya change to dasya? What does it literally mean to be degraded in this aspect? Yeah, the swarup isn't part of the jiva. So we've already discussed this 100 million times in these classes. If your swarup, of course, cannot change. The swarup of the jiva is fixed eternally, but his bhakti is not part of his swarup, so that can change. So his attraction to the Madhurya rasa can go away, and he becomes attracted to another rasa, dasya rasa, for example. I don't like the word inferior, like less complete. Maybe that's a better word to use here. So because the bhakti isn't part of the swarup of the jiva, it can shift. So there's that. Okay, any other comment or question anyone wants to ask here before we close out? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, Haryam Tat Sat, thanks a lot. We'll continue tomorrow with the subject matter of Nishta Bhakti. Hari Hari Bo. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Sri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur ki Jai. Sri Madhurya Kadambini ki Jai. Go.